Russell Westbrook announced his retirement today, and his career just came to an end now after playing last season with the Sacramento Kings. Russell Westbrook played 18 seasons in the NBA, so he had a super long career. And I actually think it's great that he's retiring now at the age of 37. He's about to turn 38. I feel a lot of these guys are staying too long, and they're staying way beyond how long they should stay. Granted, you can say with Westbrook that he was forced to retire because maybe there were no teams interested in him, but maybe he just decided on his own that it was time to hang it up and that there was just no point of continuing to play. So I'm not sure which one was the truth, but I think it's just good that he's retiring. He's going to turn 38 soon. He's nearing 40. I just don't see the point of playing that long, especially if you're not going to contend for a championship. You're just dragging it out. But I think it's unfortunate that with his generation of players, they want to play forever. And I say this as a fellow millennial that I'm getting tired of these millennial ballers staying in the league for that long. But anyways, I just want to go to Russell Westbrook's career and go down his accolades before I really go in on him. So he played 18 seasons. He holds an interesting record in the sense that he's only the second player in NBA history to have scored more than 25,000 points and more than 10,000 assists, which is pretty insane when you look at that for statistic right there. And another interesting thing about Russell Westbrook, I think he might be the all-time leader in triple doubles, or maybe Jokic has already passed him by now. So I'm sure he's in that top two for sure. And I'm just going to read some more accolades about him. He was a 9-time NBA All-Star. 2 times he won the All-Star Game MVP. He made it to the All-NBA First Team 2 times. He made it to the All-NBA Second Team 5 times. He made it to the All-NBA Third Team 2 times. So a total of 9 All-NBA team appearances. He was a scoring champion twice in this league. He led the league in assists 3 times. He was part of the NBA 75 greatest team. And he was also the 4th pick of the 2008 NBA draft. So his accolades really stick out. He's definitely going to get into the Hall of Fame when you look at his numbers. So he definitely does not have to worry about that. And also, he was on the 2012 gold medal team in London. A pretty great career when you look at all the awards he won. One of my biggest sticking points on Russell Westbrook when it comes to his career was this man's efficiency was hot garbage. One of the most inefficient players I've ever seen in my life. His career average is 20.9 points per game, but his field goal percentage for his career is only 43% overall and 30% overall from 3, which is very piss poor. And to me, that was the biggest knock on his career, that he was a very inefficient player. In my eyes, Westbrook really was in the mold of a Baron Davis, Steve Francis type of point guard, that those guys came before him. And I think they were really the first batch of point guards to enter the league that weren't really true point guards. They were really shooting guards who were undersized, not tall enough to be shooting guards, so they were forced to play point guard. So they were pioneers of I would say the scoring point guard generation. And Westbrook, to me, took what they did and he just took it to another level, in which he pretty much eradicated the game of having true point guards anymore. Because I remember just growing up during the 90s that you had true point guards like John Stockton, who were playmakers. You had guys like Gary Payton, who were playmakers and whatnot. And then you had Jason Kidd, who would come into the league later on, who was a playmaker. You had Chris Paul, and then Rajon Rondo, and so forth. So you had guys who were playmakers. That was really the norm when I was growing up during the 90s. Your point guard was not really supposed to be a scorer. Granted, there were guys like Kevin Johnson that could get you 20 points, but they were always supposed to be playmakers first and scoring second. And like I said, Baron Davis and Steve Francis started to change that. And then Westbrook really made it permanent because now the league does not want guys who are true playmakers at the point guard spot. They want either for you to be a great scorer at that spot, to be able to attack the rim like Westbrook was able to, or you got to be able to hit tons of threes from that spot, be like a Stephen Curry. So Westbrook really broke that mold and he changed the game with his super athletic ability. In my eyes, Westbrook is one of the most athletic guards in NBA history when it came to the point guard spot. Like, there's not many that has better athleticism than him. Like, I've seen guys like Baron Davis, Steve Francis, who were super athletic, and Kevin Johnson, but I think Westbrook is even more athletic than those guys. He had the speed, he had the verticality, just the complete package. His game was really like a Tasmanian devil that he would just barrel into the paint out of control and just try to finish. And really, his goal was just to athletic you. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but just use his athletic advantage over you and score. And that was really his greatest gift, was his speed and everything, and just his leaping abilities. And very few people could defend him one-on-one. That was his strength. But I would say his weakness was really his lack of having a good jump shot that was reliable. Hence the nickname Westbrook, and why he was always left open, because teams knew you could leave him open. That's your best chance of being able to contain him. And it did work to a large degree because his field goal percentage was always terrible. So you always had a shot of coming back in the game because Westbrook couldn't hit shots. Plus, he was very out of control that I think his turnovers were also pretty high when you look at them. Yeah, for his career, he averaged 3.9 turnovers per game, so nearly 4. And he had a lot of seasons where he was averaging over 4 turnovers a game. One season, he averaged 5.4 turnovers a game. Ironically, that was the year when he won the league MVP. So he was just a very wild player. And that was the only way he could play the game, that you were going to get a lot of brick shots from him, a lot of turnovers, and a lot of dumb plays that would just leave your head scratching. Granted, he could even it out with his great athleticism and his ability to attack the basket, to suck in 2 or 3 defenders, and then get you an open shot. I know what people would say, like, hey, you're criticizing his playmaking abilities, but this guy led the league in assists a few times. And I would say, yeah, you're right that he was leading the league in assists a few times, but the way he got those assists were not really through running plays like a John Stockton or a Jason Kidd or a Chris Paul would run. He got those assists through driving to the basket, sucking in 2-3 defenders or even more, and then just kicking it out to the open man. He couldn't set up guys to score no other way. Whereas Kidd, Chris Paul, they could set up guys in other ways to score. They could run basketball plays to set them up without having to drive every time and become predictable by driving to the paint and barreling into it to get a guy an open shot. So that to me was really a knock on his game when I reflect on it. I think that was his biggest weakness, was he didn't have like the highest basketball IQ. There's tons of highlight reels that show his bloopers, his embarrassing plays. So that to me was his biggest weakness. Out of this world athleticism, but not the highest basketball IQ when you look at him, just when it came to the way he played. But he did have an impact on all the teams he played on, good and bad, I would say, to a large degree. But just going back to 2008, he was drafted by the Thunder, and he was the 4th pick of the draft. The Thunder were coming off of a losing season where they had just won 20 games. That was Kevin Durant's rookie year. So then in the 2008-2009 season, they got Westbrook and they improved by 3 games. They ended up winning 23 games. So they were still rebuilding their team. And that was the first year they were in OKC. And then it was really the second year where they just leapfrogged and they won 50 games. They went from a 23 win team to a 50 win team. That turnaround was huge. It kind of reminds me of the Spurs turnaround last season when they won 62 games, which was 28 more wins than they had the previous year. So kind of similar and a lot of parallels in the sense that I felt Westbrook and Durant were a big part of that turnaround, but also getting James Harden with a third pick also played a big role in OKC just jumping to 50 wins, kind of like how the Spurs got Dylan Harper. That allowed them to make that jump. So kind of similar, but just going back to that, they would win 50 games and they would go to the playoffs for the first time. And they were the 8th seed. That shows you how competitive the Western Conference was back then, that 50 wins only got you the 8th seed. And in that series, they would play the defending champs, the Los Angeles Lakers. And that series actually went to 6 games. The last game, I recall that the Lakers barely closed out OKC. They only won by like 1 point. I think it was off of like a Pau Gasol tip-in. So you felt this team was going to be on the rise for years to come, that they were going to get better with the more experience they got. And Westbrook in that series was great, actually. That's when he first caught my eye. I was just like, wow, this guy's explosive and he's playing really great in his first run in the playoffs. Like, he was the best player on OKC during that series. When I look at the old stats, it really sticks out to me. He was better than Durant in that series. He was better than Harden. In that series, he averaged 20.5 points on 47% shooting from the field and 41% from three. And while Durant averaged 25, but on 35% shooting overall and 28 from three. So one of the few times Westbrook was actually efficient in his career. I don't think he ever had a playoff series where he ever shot that well again. That's what was so amazing, that Westbrook looked so good. And actually, I wasn't a hater of Westbrook from day one. I was just in awe of him. Like, wow, this guy is going to be amazing. He's super athletic. He reminds me of Baron Davis. He could actually be better than Baron Davis because he looks even stronger. He looks like he can jump higher and he can run quicker. This guy is straight up incredible. That's what I really thought about Westbrook, but my perception of him would slowly start to change over time. And then after that season, the Thunder got even better. They made it all the way to the conference finals. And Westbrook was really coming into his own that year. He made it to the All-Star game that year along with Durant. I think that might have been the first time both of them made it to the All-Star game. I could be wrong, but both of them were All-Stars that year. They got all the way to the Western Conference Finals against the Dallas Mavericks. They lost that series in 5 games. In that series, Westbrook didn't play well. Look at the numbers, 36% overall shooting from the field, 20% from three. And I have to say, even back then, I kind of looked past it, thinking like, well, he'll play better next time around. What really got me, I would say, is the 2012 playoff run that got me to really turn against Russell Westbrook, in the sense where I was like, this guy is not really an efficient player. Is like just the way he played in the NBA Finals. I remember watching him. Great. I also watched him in the Western Conference Finals against my Spurs, and I really wasn't impressed with him because he shot so poorly in that series. Really, the guy who killed the Spurs, I felt, was Kevin Durant and James Harden more than anything. Those two guys were like gangbusters, while Westbrook was just terrible. Hence the nickname Westbrook. Even for me back then, I was just like, this guy is starting to look overrated to me. I'm starting to not think he's that great. And then it really was the NBA Finals against Miami that really opened my eyes to this guy just being a jack-up artist, which is my term to a guy who just jacks up a ton of bad shots recklessly without any limits. This guy in that series, he averaged 27 points per game, but only shot 43% overall from the field, which is not too bad for Russell Westbrook. But he only shot 13% from three. And he had that one game where I think he scored 40 points. I could be mistaken. Yeah, there was that one game where he shot 43 points. I think that was like the only good game in the series he had where he looked like he was unstoppable. And that's why his percentages climbed, because in that game, he got 43 points with 62% shooting. But outside that game, he was just like terrible. Every other game, just playing reckless, diving to the basket, and just not making smart decisions. That's what I really remembered about him in that series. And just looking at, is there any other stats about here that sticks out to me in that series? Yeah, he averaged 12, only 11 turnovers, which is not bad, but yeah, out of control really overall when I reflect on that series. And then I really felt after that series was over, OKC probably, I wouldn't say probably, they made the worst mistake ever in letting James Harden walk to the Rockets when they did that sign and trade. I believe for Kevin Martin. That to me was awful. And they made that decision because they were a bunch of cheap asses. But at the same time, they made it because they had so much faith in Russell Westbrook that they thought he could be their second guy to Kevin Durant to lead them to a title eventually, that this was going to be the guy for Kevin Durant. This was going to be his partner. This was going to be like his Scottie Pippen or his Manu Ginobili or Tony Parker. And they were just going to, build a team around that, which I think was a costly mistake, because I really do believe if the Thunder had kept Harden or Westbrook, things might have been different for them. I think they have a better chance of winning a championship with Harden and Durant instead of Westbrook and Durant. So that was a very costly decision, but it just goes back to them being obsessed with Westbrook's athleticism, which is tantalizing. I can definitely see why. It can really seduce you into believing that this guy is really, really like a superstar in the making. Granted, some people argue Westbrook is a superstar, but I would say a guy who can win, you can win with. I think GMs and scouts always get sucked into athleticism because it's irresistible, at least in basketball. You look at it more so than any other sport, but it turned out to be a bad decision because after 2012, I felt OKC really only had two more cracks at contending for a title. So in 2013, OKC gets the number one seed, but Westbrook gets hurt in round one with a knee injury from Patrick Beverley, who collides into his knee. And I believe his meniscus gets torn. So he's out for all the playoffs. And that ends pretty much OKC's season. Then in round two, they lose to the Grizzlies. Then in 2014, Westbrook comes back and Durant ends up having his best season ever. Durant wins league MVP. They go to the conference finals against my Spurs, and they end up losing that series. And that to me was another blown opportunity by OKC because Durant is right in his prime. Westbrook is right in his prime, and they just can't defeat a veteran Spurs team who has a young Kawhi Leonard, but who's not a superstar yet. And in that series, it really came down to Westbrook being inefficient. You look at the numbers, Kevin Durant averaged 25.8 points per game, on 47% shooting from the field, while Westbrook actually led the team in scoring with 26.8 points per game and only shot overall 40% from the field, 28% from three. So just very inefficient numbers right there. And looking back on the series, I remember that was really the Spurs' game plan, really to force Westbrook to be the number one scorer on the team and dare him to chuck up as many shots as possible and live with it, that they would bait Westbrook to drive into the paint recklessly. And the Spurs at that time, they had great help defense in the paint with Tim Duncan and Splitter that forced a lot of misses. So they were able to bait Westbrook into making bad decisions. And that was one of main reasons why OKC lost that series, I'll still never forget game 6 of that series. That really sums up Westbrook's career in my eyes because the game was hyper competitive. It went to overtime, and there was a play where I think Westbrook had a chance to either tie the game or win the game, and it looked like he was going to get it. I believe he was on a fast break, and it looked like he had a clear opening, and then Kawhi Leonard just stripped the ball away from him, and that was pretty much the end of OKC's chance to even win that game. So Westbrook threw it away, living up to the phrase, Westbrook give it, Westbrook take it away. And that really, really summarized Westbrook's career in a microcosm. He can make something great happen, like getting a fast break, and then he can just throw it away with a dumb move. In this case, Kawhi stripping him of the ball. So that really showed you how out of control Westbrook was. But I think it also was planting the seeds for Kevin Durant to eventually leave the Thunder because Westbrook could never really play team basketball, which is what you need to win a championship, that you have to be able to move the ball around. If you look at every great championship team that wins, usually their offense has good ball movement, whether it's the Bulls with the triangle, the Spurs with their motion offense, the Warriors with their offense of moving the ball around to get the 3-point shots, and so forth. Like, you always have a structured offense that involves team play, and the Thunder just could never get over the hump to win a championship with Durant and Westbrook because to a large degree, I definitely feel Westbrook was a part of it with his ISO one-on-one basketball that he would always play, that he would always put ISO basketball number one over team basketball. And that's really what would hurt them going forward in the playoffs. Every year, Durant and Westbrook were together. So they lose that series in 2014 to the Spurs. That really hurts. And then the next year is when things start to change in OKC. So I think there's a rift that's building between Westbrook and Durant because Durant only plays 20-some games that year. He has a Jones fracture injury that keeps him out for like the rest of the season. Westbrook then starts to dominate games, and he can just pad up his numbers as much as he wants. OKC misses the playoffs, but a lot of the fans now in OKC really love Westbrook because they love his hustle and his competitiveness in every game and how he never gives up on both possessions, which I'll give Westbrook that. That's something to respect about his game, that he never was lazy when he played. He always played hard on both ends, so I'll give him that. But that's what really draws him to the OKC fans, that the Thunder, even though they missed the playoffs, they finished with a 45-37 record, above 500, and something that the Thunder fans can respect, that their team could have easily been a lottery team. Granted, they made it to a lottery, but even worse, finishing below 500 with the Kevin Durant injury. But because of Westbrook and how he willed them for the rest of the season, they were able to win 45 games, which in a lot of years can get you in the playoffs in either conference. But the West was just super competitive that year, and they just fell short. So after that, Westbrook is getting a lot of hype. The fans are loving him. It kind of reminds me of how the fans back in Philadelphia would get behind Allen Iverson, another small guard that they would just love because of his relentless engine, his hustle, him always competing and being fearless, driving to the paint. I think that started to work in Westbrook's favor and started to make him even more popular than Kevin Durant, whereas Kevin Durant was not really an emotional player like Westbrook, where he's diving on the floor, just going at it on both ends of the court. So I think that there's a little rift developing with Kevin Durant being absent. So then the next season, which is the last year Westbrook and Durant are teammates, they go on a deep run in the playoffs. They beat the Mavericks in round one in 5 games, which was pretty easy. It was just Dirk Nowitzki and a bunch of bums, really, when you look at that Mavericks team back then. Yeah, yep, I'm just looking at their roster. They were a bunch of bums, but really what it did for me during that playoff run by the Thunder was when they played my Spurs in round two, and they were able to beat the Spurs, which I did give them a lot of respect because I fell for the trick during that series that Westbrook was finally learning how to play championship winning basketball, in the sense that even though he didn't shoot well in that series, he shot 37% from the field, 28% from three, but he did average 10.5 assists per game. And he was getting involved with his teammates. He was setting them up. They were playing better as a team. And it seemed like they were running a structured offense for the first time in a long time, that things were starting to work out for them. I'm like, maybe they've figured this out now. Maybe Durant and Westbrook have figured out how to play winning basketball. But it was really the series against the Warriors which showed to me that these guys would never win a championship together. And the series started off really well. When I reflect on that series, they go up 3-1. They're playing team basketball. They're playing structured basketball, and they're very disciplined. They're frustrating Curry. They're frustrating the whole entire Warriors team, who looked unstoppable. They were gangbusters during the regular season, winning 73 games. And then suddenly it changes after game 4. The next 3 games of the series, Westbrook started chucking like crazy, like he always does, out of control, jacking up shots left and right, playing ISO basketball, and just hurting his team. Other guys were no longer included in the offense who were included earlier in the series, like Andre Roberson, who was shooting really well from three-point land in this series, shot 44%, but Westbrook stopped passing him the ball. Same with these other role players on their team. So that was very disappointing. I felt he dropped the ball, that he played selfishly, out of control after the Warriors lost game 5 and stopped trusting his teammates, which was to the detriment of the Thunder. And obviously he's not fully responsible for it. I believe he shares half the blame. And Kevin Durant shares the other half of the blame for choking that series and just quitting and just disappearing completely. But it was just I think to me, it was I would say, a great indicator to me that Westbrook was never going to be an NBA champion, because this was his best opportunity to win a title. He had the defending champs with their backs against the wall and about to read them. They're dead to rights, like they were like laying on the bed dying, literally, and he just could not finish them due to his selfishness. So that to me was the series that clinched it for me, that Westbrook is going to be a loser and he'll never win anything for the rest of his career. Some people could say like, wow, it's harsh, but I had seen enough by then to let me know. I had seen enough of a sample size of Westbrook. He wasn't really that young by then anymore. He was 27 years old, I believe, around that time. So I was like, yeah, this guy just doesn't have it in him. He's just not going to ever win. So as you know, Kevin Durant would leave the Thunder because he's a coward. Firstly, he took the easy way out in joining a stacked team with the Warriors, but also because he hated playing with Durant. I mean, he hated playing with Westbrook. He did not like how Westbrook could not run a free-flowing offense where there was ball movement. It was just an ISO offense that was very predictable to guard. So Westbrook was a huge reason why Durant left. And I don't blame Durant for leaving. I always blame him for going to the Warriors. He could have gone to any other team, but he wanted the easy path out. But I think he always gets overshadowed by Durant's bitch move that Westbrook was a huge reason why he left the Thunder, that he was not a fun guy to play with, a guy who's very ball dominant, that can't run a structured offense to win a championship. So that's something to include in Westbrook's legacy, I feel, when you look at his career. But I think Durant leaving for Westbrook was the best thing ever. It was a career boom for him, as I would say, that things just got really good for Westbrook the next few years when he was in OKC, because he got to be the man. He got to play reckless, out of control, and stat pad his numbers like a mofo and not be accountable for any losses OKC would suffer, because the argument was, well, Russ does not have enough help, so we can't criticize him for stacking his numbers, because he has to pad his numbers for OKC to have a chance to win. That's the only way they can win. I remember hearing it from all these Westbrook lovers. And that was really the year where he stat padded like crazy to get the MVP. His first season without Durant, where he was averaging a triple double, which I know people are going to say, you're a hater. I would have found more impressive if he could have led his team to a top 3 record like Jokic did in the past when he would average a triple double. Just, I would have been amazed. But I really felt that was really a reflection of how really the rule changes are now coming into play that allows NBA players to pad their stats around the time when he averaged a triple-double for the first time, because assists were easy to get. And just the way the NBA counts assists were different around that time than it was in the past. There's videos about that where if you pass the ball to a guy, and even if he's dribbling around for more than several seconds, they're going to count as an assist, which is stupid, especially on an ISO play. But you get what I'm saying. They were just padding those assist numbers. And I wasn't particularly impressed by what Westbrook was doing that season, because there were even games where he literally would tell guys like Steven Adams not to rebound the ball when the opposing team would miss, so he could get the rebound, just push the ball up the court. And that was just for him to pad his rebounding numbers. So again, a very selfish player that took advantage of the glory he was given due to Durant leaving and Durant becoming the villain. Everybody circled around him in OKC, which I get. They're going to circle around the guy who stayed versus the guy that left. But the national media was really dumb to buy into that narrative and story. If we're being honest here, they went with that narrative and building up Westbrook as this good guy, the loyal guy, the hardworking guy who never takes a play off. And he was able to win an MVP off of that. I didn't think he deserved it. I thought Kawhi Leonard deserved it. I know people can say you're biased, you're a Spurs fan, but I thought Kawhi was just better than him that year. He led the Spurs to the second best record in the league with 60 wins. And if he didn't get hurt, I'm convinced he would have led them to another championship. But I am not crying over it because of what Kawhi has now got himself into. So even though Westbrook stole that MVP from him, I'm perfectly fine. Like, Westbrook got an MVP he didn't deserve, but it's cool. Just wanted to point that out there. Ooh. And then after Westbrook had that MVP season, OKC went out and did him a solid, I felt, when they got him Paul George and Carmelo Anthony. And they were just like, well, now we got Westbrook some help. Now OKC can contend in the Western Conference, that they have their own super team. And they were really wrong, the media. They were just way off about that team, because they would finish only in 4th place in the West, and they would end up losing to the Utah Jazz in 6 games. They were the favorites to win the series, the Thunder, that is, and they ended up losing that series. What was interesting in that series to me was how Ricky Rubio, the first 2 or 3 games of that series, outplayed Westbrook, and Westbrook took it so personal that he would start yelling about how he's going to get Rubio back, when Rubio is not a known ISO baller. And Westbrook fell into that trap, feeling he had to show Rubio up to the detriment of his team. And in that series, he shot like crap, 29.3 points per game on 39% overall shooting from the field, which is horrible. 35 from 3, I'll give him that. Decent from 3, but horrible overall shooting percentage. And that team just folded up against the Jazz, against a young Donovan Mitchell, who clearly outplayed Westbrook in that series, averaging 28.5 points per game on 46% shooting and 36 from 3. That young Jazz team also had a young Rudy Gobert, who was very young, heading into his prime. And Westbrook could not take them out when he was at the peak of his powers. He had a Paul George in his prime, and Carmelo Anthony was like at the tail end of his, and they still managed to lose that series in 6. Just another example of how overrated Russell Westbrook was. And then you go to his last year with the Thunder. they actually improved by 1 win from the previous season, and they ended up winning 49 games that year. So they ended up with a 6 seed and losing to the Portland Trailblazers in 5 games. In that series, Damian Lillard just went off, embarrassed Russell Westbrook, averaged 33 points on 46% shooting from the field, 48 from three. Just absurd. And CJ McCollum also torched him because Westbrook was switching back and forth on those guys. Averaged 45% overall from the field, 44 from three, 24.4 points. I felt that was another series that exposed Westbrook, and that's when Westbrook really was starting to decline in my eyes, because he had shown 2 years in a row, even with talent and help, he couldn't get a team over the hump, that he just wasn't good enough, and he did not take his game to the next level in the playoffs. That's what all-time greats do. They always raise their game to another level. And in that series, Westbrook only averaged 22.8 points per game, 9 rebounds, and granted, he averaged 10.6 assists, but he shot 36% overall from the field. Crap, 32 from three, garbage, just garbage numbers. So that was the end of Russell Westbrook in OKC, as him and Paul George would force their way out and really paved the way for OKC to rebuild their team into what they have today. If you're looking at it, they made some big-time trades involving those two. He gets traded to the Rockets, and he only plays 1 season with them. It was an infamous bubble season where he played with them, and in that series, what was interesting, he led the Rockets to the 4th seed that year with James Harden. And in that series against the Thunder, he wasn't amazing at all. He only averaged 14.7 points per game, 41% shooting overall from the field, and 16% from three, 6.3 rebounds, 4 assists. So a sign that Russ is on the decline, even as a second guy on the team. They end up losing to the eventual fake champions, the Lakers. I'm going to say fake because I never respected that bubble ring. They will lose in round 2. And in that series, Westbrook, again, just inefficient, 19.8 points per game, 42% from the field, 25 from three. And this would be the last time Westbrook would be in a Rocket uniform. He would actually end up getting traded to the Washington Wizards, where he would have like a redemption arc that year with the Wizards, that he was able to go back to being an all-star again, I meant to say. And he led them to an incredible 34 wins that season. That just shows you how bad the East was, that they were able to get into the playoffs with 34 wins. But he was able to lead them back to the playoffs, and he got a lot of positivity from that, in the sense where he was able to rebrand himself as a, I guess, winner, as weird as that sounds, because he was able to get them into the playoffs. So that garnered the interest of the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James. So he gets traded to the Lakers after that season. And that's really when the downfall of Russell Westbrook begins, is when he's in the Lakers, when he's with the Lakers. And I'm going to be fair about Russell Westbrook's time with the Lakers, because I felt he was really a scapegoat for LeBron James's failures. Grant Westbrook was inefficient, but I thought he took the blame when he shouldn't have fully taken it. He took the blunt of the blame, as they would say, that he didn't deserve it. I fully blame the Lakers missing the playoffs that year on LeBron and Anthony Davis missing so many games. Like, LeBron only played 56 games that year. Anthony Davis only played 40 games that year. Westbrook was only the third option on that team, and he was kind of decent, 18.5 points per game, 44% shooting from the field. He actually took less shots than both LeBron and Anthony Davis, but he was the guy who took the blame for their failures, and he was the easy scapegoat for LeBron James, who used it to his advantage to shield himself from any criticism for failing to lead the Lakers to the playoffs, because we know LeBron could not take that criticism because that would let people know he's starting to get old and he's on the decline. So Westbrook had to take the blunt of the blame, and that really wasn't right. So I don't blame Westbrook for their failure to miss the playoffs. And then it just got worse for him that second year in LA, in which they were struggling again, and it didn't look like they would get into the playoffs. I think at one point in time they were playing below 500 basketball. Eventually they would pull it together, but Westbrook wouldn't get to be a part of that because they would flip him and trade him to the Los Angeles Clippers. That's where he would get traded to, and the Lakers actually, after they traded him around February, that's when they started to go on their run. They went to the playoffs. They went all the way to the conference finals. That really hurt Westbrook's reputation because the Lakers got into the playoffs as a 7th seed and they got all the way to the Western Conference Finals. And the narrative was like, wow, the Lakers are just so much better because they got rid of Westbrook. They're a better team. And it was really Westbrook that was really holding them back this whole entire time, when I thought that narrative was a bunch of BS. And yes, Westbrook is inefficient, but really the Lakers got better because, first of all, they made a move to trade for Rui Hachimura during the trade deadline in February, and Hachimura really played out his ass during the playoffs for the Lakers. And Austin Reeves also just got better. His emergence, those two guys were the reason why the Lakers were able to go on that run. And I'm just being honest about that. They don't make the Hachimura trade, they don't get out of round one. That's how important he was. But Westbrook, again, took the blunt of the blame for the Lakers' early struggles that season. And he never recovered from that ever once it was set in stone that he was billed as the guy responsible for the Lakers' failures during his 2 years, while LeBron never got any of the blame when he deserved it. So that to me was probably the biggest mistake of Westbrook's career, that playing for the Lakers, that really did him in. And after that, he was kind of like a pariah. He did get to play for the Clippers after he got traded to the Jazz. They cut him, so he never had to play for them. And with the Clippers, he had some solid seasons. Nothing really that amazing. His first year with the Clippers, 15.8 points per game. 48% shooting, 35 from three. Actually very efficient. His second season with the Clippers, he averaged 11.1 points per game on 45% shooting from the field, 27 from three, but overall decent shooting. I would say his 2 seasons with the Clippers, he was actually, decent, and he played really well in the role that he was put in there. They lost 2 times in a row in the first round with him, but I don't blame him for that. That was really mainly Kawhi Leonard playing only 2 games each year in the playoffs. You're not going to win when your best player only plays 2 games 2 years in a row in the first round. So Westbrook was kind of just decent with the Clippers, but definitely way past his prime, no longer a star. And then he had this cool redemption arc, I felt, with the Denver Nuggets, where he had a really good season for them as a 6th man. He was incredible off the bench. 13.3 points per game on nearly 45% shooting overall from the field, 32 from three. So decent numbers, 6.1 assists off the bench. Granted, he had a lot of turnovers, 3.2. So, but he had a lot of fun with the Nuggets. I think if he had came to the Nuggets a few years earlier, it might have been the best thing for his career. And if he was willing to accept being a 6th man or a 3rd or 4th option behind Jamal Murray and Jokic, I think that would have been awesome for him, because Jokic really knew how to utilize him, was able to get him to play off the ball and set him up for a lot of great plays. And it was fun to watch. Just like Jokic, some people felt was like unlocking him, and he was doing amazing things with them. So I thought that was pretty cool to watch that season. And that was really, really like the last year Westbrook had any credibility, for being honest here. He had even a good first round series against the Clippers, his former team, which was fun to watch. He averaged 13.8 points per game against them. and didn't shoot well overall from the field, 43%, but 41 from three. So he was hitting all his 3-point shots against them, and he was having a lot of fun. Granted, they would lose in round two against the Thunder. They would lose in 7 games, and he didn't have really a good series against his former team. When I'm just looking at his numbers here in that series, just pulling it up, he averaged 9.7 points per game, 2.7 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 34% shooting overall from the field, 21 from three. Very inefficient, but that series went to 7 games. Honestly, I thought he should have just retired after that series was over and just gone out on a high note. Even though he didn't win a championship, at least he could say that he was part of a very productive team and that fought hard until the end. They lost in 7 games to the eventual champions, the Thunder. That's something he could have felt good about instead of playing out his final year with the Sacramento Kings, which to me just was dumb when you think about it. I'm just going to pull up his numbers for his final year. Just give me a minute or two. So his final season, 15.2 points per game on 42% shooting, 33% overall from the field, 6.7 assists, 5.4 rebounds. So you could say that was a solid year for him. And his efficiency, well, it's typical Westbrook efficiency, for being honest here. But, he was padding on a very bad team. The Kings finished with 20 wins, 62 losses, and the worst record in the NBA. So that was terrible, I would say. But he really should have retired after Denver. That was a mistake. It's interesting when I look at the Kings not the Kings record, but his numbers, that it looked like he could still be a bench player for an NBA team, but I guess no contenders were interested in him. That's probably my theory about it, that they didn't want to touch him, and they were just like, nah, we don't want you. So he was forced to retire, I would say a large degree to his bad reputation, his negative reputation that he wasn't able to overcome from what happened with the Lakers, despite that one good year with the Nuggets, in which I think people attributed it mainly to Jokic's greatness of making him into a system player, and that he still could not play within a team system without a player like Jokic. So that pretty much ended it for Russell Westbrook. My biggest criticisms of Westbrook was that his ego was the size of a mountain, and it did not allow him to be a team player, that he just couldn't help it, that he always believed his ISO ball could win games at the highest levels when it couldn't. I think that has a lot to do with his out-of-this-world athleticism. When you have that out-of-the-world athleticism, you don't really have to think the game out. You don't have to think about strategy because it's just too easy for you. And it's the simplest thing. Just you could take only 1 or 2 steps and you're right in the paint area and you have an opportunity to finish. So you're going to abuse that and not really think of strategy. I think that's one of the biggest things that hurt him. But I also think one thing he could have fixed is his jump shot, that his jump shot was so ugly, hence the nickname Westbrook by a lot of people. And that's really on him, that he could have fixed it. I don't care what anyone says. Even a guy like Jason Kidd, towards the end of his career, managed to become a good 3-point shooter. So it's fixable, but you got to put in the hours and hours of work to want to fix it. And I don't think he did, to be honest. And the reason for that was he felt he could get away with it and that he didn't have to. And to a large degree, he was. He was able to play nearly 20 years without having a jump shot. How many guys can last that long without having a jump shot? But he was able to do it. But it did cost him in the end, in the sense that he wasn't able to win a championship. So he lost out on that. But maybe he doesn't care about it because he made a little bit over $350 million career-wise. So he's set forever for the rest of his life. He won in that regard. So I guess he's happy. He got to really play his career the way he wanted to play it. He got all these accolades, including the MVP. So, as weird as it sounds, I don't think Westbrook has any regrets the way it ended because he got to get paid and do his play his career the way he wanted to play it. So that's one thing I would say. One closing thing I'll say about Westbrook that I didn't really like about him, I thought he was very spoiled in this regard that he couldn't handle it when fans would chant Westbrook to him. He would get emotional. He would confront fans, and I thought that was very stupid. Now I get it if fans are screaming death threats against your family or they're screaming racial slurs against you. I definitely get the anger and I get the animosity. Heck, I'll get it if you want to lunge at them, but when guys were just chanting Westbrook and it was on tape and you're going crazy, you're going nuts. I didn't respect that. I thought that was very, very cowardly and stupid, immature, and showed to me he's a very sensitive guy that wants to be pampered to. Like, that's one thing I don't really like about this generation of players. And I say this as a millennial that they're a first generation of players who are very spoiled that they couldn't handle insults from fans. And I'm not talking about just being called curse words, but simple stuff like you're shooting bricks, your game is garbage. They would get emotional about that. Like that to me is just super pampered, super sensitive. If someone's not even cursing at you, you're about to lose your damn mind. So I didn't respect that about him. And I still remember there was just one story, I think that happened when he was in OKC where a reporter, I think it might have been for OKC, a local reporter, somebody was in a room where the Thunder players had a meal and the meal was over and he went over to get some of the food to eat the reporter and Westbrook yelled at him and told him that the food's not for him and he doesn't deserve it. To me, that stuff like that is crazy, just at the end of the day, you got to eat your food first, you got to eat it, and now you're done, but you're going to come up to a reporter and start yelling at them. Just to me, I just didn't like that about him. I thought he was a very immature guy, a spoiled guy, a guy who never really had to be held accountable other than his final few years in the league. Really, that's when it fell apart, like after 2022, when the Lakers after 2023, I would say when the Lakers got rid of him, then his final 3 years were like in career infamy. So he was very spoiled, and I think he really knows that at the end of the day. But I have nothing else to say about him. So that's pretty much it. If you like my video, like it and write some stuff in the comments. I really do enjoy reading your comments. I don't have anything else to say about this.